and I thought, I don't think this is for me.
Okay.
And so basically, quit that and started milking cows 4 days later.
Let me just get this straight. So you're a lawyer, you're a investment banker, a lawyer, and a doctor, and now milking cows. So you're the most overqualified dairy farmer I've ever heard of. But anyway, keep going. Yeah. I'm Matt Cooper, and this is Bite Sides. Welcome to our second edition of our new series, our second series of the Ausfine Foods Bite Sides podcast. Very excited on today's edition. I first saw our guest today at a Dairy Australia breakfast conference. He spoke exceptionally well, and he was a refreshing new voice into the industry. So I was really, really keen to get him on the pod and learn more about his backstory. He's got the most apt name for where he has ended up. James Greenacre, welcome to the Bite Sides podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
As I mentioned, really excited to have you aboard. So thanks again for your time on your trip over here to Melbourne. As I said, really intrigued on your backstory. So if you wouldn't mind, give us your journey as to how you've ended up as a young dairy farmer over in Tasmania.
Yep. I think young is probably a bit of a stretch these days, but we live down in Tasmania. I've got a wife and 3 kids, 3 young boys, and we're in an equity partnership with another local family, and we milk about 2,000 cows across 2 different farms. But I haven't always been in the dairy industry. I kind of have tried a few different things, and I'm from the south coast of New South Wales originally and moved to Tasmania about 8 years ago. So,
and keep going. South coast of New South Wales. So you grew up whereabouts?
So I was actually born on the kitchen floor. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So
by the 5th, mum just
pretty well oiled machine by then.
I know how this works.
Yes, born into a saucepan, I think. And my parents are professionals, and we had a small hobby farm. Went to school there. Loved cows. We had a hobby farm, had a few cows, loved grass. And, but I guess for us, dairying or agriculture probably more generally was not really an option, and was probably seen as, if you don't have land to go and farm yourself, there's pretty limited options. And I guess I just wasn't aware of the breadth and scale of the opportunities in the industry. So went away to boarding school, was fortunate to go away to boarding school, and then
was that in Sydney?
That was in Sydney, yep. So just 2 hours away. And then I went to ANU in Canberra, studied commerce law.
So not ag science?
No, I wanted to do ag.
Commerce law, right.
Yep. So I actually started off doing environmental studies, but with the idea of ag, kind of a bit of science in there. And then I really enjoyed like business and stuff, and I had no intention ever of being a lawyer, but did that too. And was fortunate to have finished that degree. That was probably a bit of a slog in the end, but got there in the end. And then I actually worked for Macquarie Bank in there. It was when they were setting up Lawson Grains, and so I was working in Lawson Grains as a business analyst, which was an unreal job. That was a fantastic job straight out of uni.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I did that for 2 years. And I guess I could just see, I love corporate agriculture, but could just see that, as you progress through that industry, the number of jobs become smaller, and they become, less reliable and spread over a broader area. So you might have a job in Sydney with one of the big corporates, and then you might lose your job, or the fund might sell or something.
Sure.
And then you might have to wait 18 months to get a job, and it might be in Melbourne.
Yep.
And I guess at that age, I didn't like the idea of having to move family and do that.
So how old were you at this stage?
I was 24, 25.
Okay. Yep. So you came to that realisation fairly young.
Pretty early, yeah.
Pretty young in life.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I have realised that having a having just something that's your home and very stable is something that has weirdly, been important to me. And so that's probably been a bit of a recurring theme throughout. So I'd always... Dad's actually was a paediatrician before he retired, and I'd always thought about doing medicine. So I'd actually, at my brother's bucks party, I got talking to one of his good mates.
This is when all great decisions are made, by the way, at a bucks party.
Yeah, I should never have gone. But anyway, so he was a doctor and was saying how good it was, and I guess it made me think, maybe I should go and pursue this doctor thing. And so I was working and studying the GAMSAT, and it kind of just progressed one foot after the other, and it got accepted. And having not had a gap year, I thought, here's my chance. And then you turn up to day one of med school and you realise that it's quite serious, which it should be.
I'm shocked.
How naive I was to just think.
Could I just interrupt just for 2 seconds for my ignorance? And I don't know, I could be the only one. GAMSAT.
Oh, yeah, so the GAMSAT's like the postgrad admission exam
right.
You have to sit to
get into medicine.
Okay. So but it's not like, what is this limb on a body? It's like, it's all sorts of random problem solving type stuff.
Yep.
And so I did that, and then I met some great people doing medicine, but basically did that for 18 months, lived back at home with mum and dad, and they had bought another place during that time that I was living on. And I just really enjoyed running a few cows for them, basically. And that was progressing along. And then at the same time, I went started our placements at med school. And, I guess hospitals can be pretty challenging places in the sense of there's a lot of, 40-year-old sick people, but a lot of people dying of some self-inflicted morbidity, I guess. Yep. Yeah. So, and I thought, I don't think this is for me.
Okay.
And so, basically, quit that and started milking cows 4 days later.
Let me just get this straight. So you're a lawyer, you're a investment banker, a lawyer, and a doctor. And now milking cows. So you're the most overqualified dairy farmer I've ever heard of. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
So where were you milking cows 4 days later?
Oh, look, So we knew a guy locally, 5 k's down the road. I just started.
Still in New South Wales?
Yep. So I just started casual milking for him. And the poor bloke, I put a fair bit of antibiotic milk in the fat at his place. It took me a while to get my head around, systems and that sort of thing. So I was pretty very naive and green.
As you would be. You haven't done it before.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah. So, and he was great. And then I got a full-time job locally with a guy who was incredibly good to us throughout the period. And it's amazing. One thing that we've been very fortunate with is every step along the way we've had amazing help and just worked with really good people. So even the guy I was milking casually for, he was tried to teach me as much as he could, and then the guy that I worked for full time, when I actually finished up there 18 months later to move to Tasmania, he helped us buy heifers and get us started, and that probably really gave us our start. Taking those heifers to Tasmania and, showing that we were really keen on what we were doing, I guess.
And so from New South Wales to Tassie, how did you end up? So it sounds like it was a brand new farm.
Yep.
In Tassie?
So, so we were looking for opportunities, and around us it's not much. It's there's a small number of farms now on the south coast of New South Wales, so opportunities are very limited. And I distinctly remember looking at leasing a farm that was going to milk 110 cows through a single 8-a-side walkthrough, basically, and with no house or anything. And we're seriously looking at it. And at the same time, and then we got married and we went to Tasmania on our honeymoon. And so basically we're in Tassie for a month. And I cold called a Tasmanian dairy farmer just to see how they do it down there. And basically through, some connections down there, just got put onto the family that we're now in business with. But we were never wanting to move. It wasn't on our radar to move. It was just wanting to learn and meet some new people, I guess, and see how they do it down there. And I just found it really refreshing to meet people that were really focused on their business and trying to run their business as best as they could, rather than thinking about what the milk price should be. And I guess from there, it just kind of evolved from that. We got on really well with our the person that we met down there, and they called us back a few months later and said, look, do you want to come down and run our dairy? And we said we want to have a bit of skin in the game. And so we just got on a plane and went down there and kind of nutted it out over a long weekend, and just how we were going to do it, and what we both wanted out of life and the dairy and all that type of stuff. And it was great because we still weren't fully invested in moving to Tassie. So there was not much pressure.
Yep.
So you're being open, you're being vulnerable, telling them all the things you're really bad at, and so it worked out really well. So that was so we met them on our honeymoon, and pretty much a year to the day later we moved down there. Yeah.
Big move. And whereabouts in Tassie are you?
We're about 20 minutes southwest of Launceston, a town called Cressy, and then the farm that we bought last year is at Deloraine.
And how far further on is that?
Oh, that's 25 minutes from the home farm. Yeah. So when we got there, it was we were milking about 750 cows.
Okay.
On about 180 hectares of irrigation, and we have I guess we grew it over a number of, early on we grew it quite significantly. We went from 750 to 1,200 and increased our platform size. And then from there, in the last 18 months, we've probably we have gone from 1,300 to taking on another farm and going to 2,000 cows. It's been a good journey so far, I guess.
It's a hell of an undertaking, 2,000 cows. That's a serious undertaking. I think anything over 50 cows is a serious undertaking, but that is, that's next level. Just while we're talking about that and talking about economics, dairy farm economics, going from 750 to 1,200 or 1,300 and now to 2,000, have you found that there is a genuine economies of scale that you've been able to find as you've scaled up to that many cows, or is it incremental costs go up regardless how many cows you have?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think that as you increase, really probably my job now is to look after the business side of things and really try to look after the people that work for us. And we try to empower them so that they can look after the cows in the best way they see fit. Mm-hmm. So you've got to train them about what as they see fit can mean.
Yeah.
But you're probably going from, say, 700 cows. I was milking a lot, and you're seeing the cows, what the sick cows, and then as you grow, you're relying on other people. So really you probably get into a lot more people management. And until recently we've had we've contract managed another farm, so we've had up to 25 staff, and so really at that you kind of you're seeing cows in the paddock and checking residuals, and but you're not necessarily there injecting cows with penicillin. So it's about systems and people and getting them engaged, and so I've really enjoyed that progression. But in terms of your question about the economies of scale, I think you do get some economy. You get some economies of scale. I think you get some diseconomies of scale.
Yeah.
But what you probably get is if you've got a really good farming system underneath it all, then the real advantage that you're getting is the duplication of that system. So, so it's not necessarily economies of scale that's working for you. It's the fact that you've got something that's returning something and you can go again.
Yep.
And providing you've got the systems to override it and it's not all on your shoulders, then you can try to get your returns that way.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just taking a step back from it being specifically about dairying, it's the same challenges we face growing Ausfine. Exactly the same. That's how do you go from a 5-people operation where you're hands-on on everything and wear about 15 different caps, to then growing it, taking a step back from being on hands-on and managing people, and still trying to arrive at the same outcomes as it would be if you were doing it. It's challenging, and you're right, it is process, and you're putting a lot of faith in those people. So those guardrails that are around your staff and employees, but giving them room where they can be themselves and make their own calls as well is challenging. And a bit of hit and miss sometimes.
And I think that economies of scale a little bit can be, if there's 5 of you and you're all trying to wear all different hats, then you're kind of the, the master of none and jack of all, or whatever it is. Whereas what we've probably found is, with 15 or 20, or you guys would be much bigger or whatever size, but is you actually have the opportunity, if you really enjoy certain parts of your business and you're the best at them, that specialisation. We've found like taking a few people off the milking roster that just aren't good at milking, but they're really good at other things. So you get a bit more flexibility that way, don't you?
For sure. It's really true. And I'll openly say, before I stepped into the CEO role, was again still wearing 2 or 3 hats, but probably not doing any of them particularly well because you weren't focused on them. You're constantly taking one off and putting another hat on, to use that acronym or that analogy. Sorry. And you're right. Specialization is definitely where you want to end up, and having those people who are really specialized in that area do a much better job than you're ever going to do.
Yes.
Just because that's their sole responsibility.
And then I think you can probably get some, like we've found, if they're really good at one thing, they then learn to respect that they may not be good at another.
Yeah.
And so then you can start to build some like team camaraderie and I think that can kind of help in the overall, that can then help in empowering staff, because they're not just empowered by you, they can be empowered by the team. So it's not actually you it is you they're letting down if something goes wrong, but it's actually the person that's going to have to milk the next morning, or we've found that has worked well so far for us.
Yeah, but also creating that, you mentioned the word vulnerability before, but creating an environment where someone can safely be vulnerable to say, I am actually not very good at that thing. I am good at this thing, and this area over here really interests me. Can I specialize in that? And just having that environment where someone puts a hand up and goes, you know what, either I don't know what I'm doing, I need some help, or I'm not enjoying this. That's where you're going to get the secret sauce, I think. Yeah,
and also where they know that, as long as I guess one thing we try to do is reward attitude rather than output a little bit. So if someone is making the same mistake a few times but they've got a fantastic attitude, you can really work with that. Whereas if someone is perfect all the time but has a bad attitude, that can be hard, I find. So we just try to set up an environment where we all make mistakes. And I make a hell of a lot more than a lot of other people. And so just understanding that, that as long as there's not negligence or that cows are looked after and that we're not impacting on our customer, then we can fix everything else.
That's a great attitude, and that's, I think, when we as a company are at our best, is when we're taking that type of attitude and people feel that.
Definitely.
That they can be more vulnerable. So really hit the ground 8 years ago when you came into the industry and hit the ground running. You 750 cows, and then quickly grew that. So you got a pretty unique view of coming into the industry. With your background in law and medicine, and although you're exposed to it with Macquarie. What has been your take on the Australian dairy industry as far as just in general, and any specific call-outs that you'd like to make mention of?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic industry first and foremost. I think it's amazing that we're able to produce a product and we can produce as much as we want, and someone will come and pick it up, and they'll go and deal with the rest of it, and we'll get paid every month for it. So, whether that's 10 kilos of milk solids or 10,000, we're getting paid. And I think that's pretty amazing. And we don't have to worry about enticing customers or anything like that. So that's been amazing. Opportunities for...
Can I just say, I think that's a very unique attitude to have, but keep going.
But it is, I mean...
I 100% agree with you. But
so I guess also, the context is that pretty much, I came in the year after the clawbacks.
Oh, yes.
So let's not get into the clawbacks, but I have been very fortunate.
Let's always look forward.
Yeah. So I have been fortunate in kind of in when the timing.
Yep. Sure.
So that's probably impacted on my insights around it. I think that it's an awesome industry. I think it is so varied. Milking cows on the south coast of New South Wales, where year-round calving, generally slightly smaller herd sizes. I kind of analogize that to, growing fine wool in one place as opposed to fat lambs, trading lambs in another. They both revolve around sheep and they both have similar outputs, but they're so different, and I think that makes it so hard for the industry to, really band together and outline, what do we want as an industry? Because the people in Queensland, they probably want something very different to what we want in Tasmania. And so that makes it really hard to, do research and development and extension, and then also, how do we advocate for what we need? So I think that's really challenging, and that's hard to overcome. I think it's a complex industry that is really, the businesses are big now, and so that whole thing of becoming where you can be technically really good at something like milking cows or treating cows, but they're bigger businesses now. There are a lot of farms that are over 1,000 cows, and that kind of people management is really challenging. And I think the avenues for people getting in is also challenging too. But overall, I think it's a great industry to be in, and I think that it's so unheralded, and I feel like there's so many opportunities in it if you're adaptive enough to think about things in a different way.
Yeah, it's a really refreshing take on the industry, because I've lamented many times, and I will absolutely acknowledge that the role that we play is far removed from what you do, putting cups on the cows every morning and afternoon. I get that, but from our vantage point, it is so often doom and gloom. The age of the farmer is whatever it is, insert 65 average or 70, and they want to get out, and there's no kid, they don't have children coming through to take over the farm, to the milk check's never enough and everyone's losing, and it's a bit Debbie Downer, to be honest, as far as a lot of the rhetoric coming out of the industry. So that's why I was so interested to have a chat with you, because you expressed that at the breakfast, and there are other young farmers coming through as well that share that sentiment, that it is an exciting place to be and exciting opportunities.
Yep.
And that's certainly what we see from an export point of view as well. I think often we take for granted what we have here, which is not unusual for an Australian, but we do, as far as the quality of the product that we consume on a daily basis. Then that goes out to the export market, and it's really highly valued, and there is a differentiation there that we can really take advantage of. So there is good news stories around, but so often we're bogged down in the not such good news story. So
I think also, just to interrupt, I think dairy farming's also hard because traditionally it is just so all-encompassing, and there are cows to milk morning and night, and so for a lot of people, you could appreciate a situation where if you're in your 50s or 60s and you've milked cows for the last 40 years, whoever comes into your business and tries their best, they're not going to live up to your standards.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that can make it more challenging, and that kind of makes that generational transfer more challenging. If you're 55, you might have someone come into your business who could actually end up share farming that business for you to allow you to partially retire. But maybe you're jaded and you have this, because your whole farm is around that dairy shed, it's going to be really hard not to tread on each other's feet there, and I think that can have an impact on how the industry kind of sees itself.
Yeah, and the willingness of the young people to come in.
Yes.
On that backdrop, like you said, it's a very expensive industry to get into if you're coming in cold.
Yeah.
Every aspect of it is expensive. Expensive capital, herd, etc. So yeah, I think that's right. And yes, it's, let me not downplay, it is incredibly hard physically industry to be in. It's been a hard job. You know, you mentioned the farmer at 55, 60, potentially doing it since he was a kid or she.
Yeah.
It's a really hard job and very demanding, and rain, hail or shine, you're out there covered in flies, or, you know, if it's in the middle of summer and it's not nice. And, you know, dealing with sick cows or, you know, manure constantly and water challenges, etc. It's a hard job. Yeah. So not downplaying that at all. It's just, it is on that backdrop. It is refreshing to have someone say, you know what, this is a really great industry to be in, lots of opportunities. So talking about the opportunities and looking forward, I guess number one for your own farm to begin with, but then for the industry, what do you see as far as the future for you, and where are the opportunities for Australian dairy farming going forward?
I guess for us, you know, we're our business has grown to a reasonable size where we get a bit of freedom from the farm, which is great. But we also have a fantastic team of people that work with us we've had a lot of our main, you know, key staff have been with us for, you know, 5 to 8 years, the time that we've been down there. And I guess, you know, if you're going around saying that there's heaps of opportunity in the industry and that it's a great industry to be in, you kind of, when you take other people's time, you know, we've got young staff that are 20 to 30. I feel like we all get more money. We can all get, you know, more of materials, but we can't get more time. And so I feel like, you know, for us, it would be good to keep growing to provide opportunities for the people that have worked so well with us. And so I guess that's probably the first thing I'd say on the business front, and also just help people achieve what they want to achieve, whether it's, you know, to go and manage a farm somewhere else or to do something with us, that'd be great, or to go and do something in a different industry. I feel like you almost have a duty of care to really help those people along that journey. And so I guess that's that one for us. And in terms of the industry, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is, and it is, and I guess the answer is, you know, it's not so dissimilar to what you said before around the disparity in, and I don't want to answer your question that I asked you, but but it's difficult. It kind of comes back to your point around the disparity of different farms in different regions of the country, and even side by side, one can be generational farm and the next one could have been bought yesterday, and they're in totally different baskets as far as pressures on costs. It kind of gets back also to that point around the cost of production. You know, people talk about the cost of production for a dairy farmer and whether a certain milk price is profitable or not. Well, for who? Yeah. You know, you can go through the medium, but it could be, you know, very so disparaging in like disparity in the highs and the lows of cost of production, that it might be a fairly narrow band of farmers that actually sit in the average. Yeah. So anyway, but
and that's been one thing I love about Tassie, is that really for us, our focus, without being too tight and without cutting corners, our goal is just to have the lowest cost of production that we can. Yep. You know, and that there is a curve there around production and output, and you want to sit at a nice place on that curve, but we try to maintain a low cost of production so that we can withstand the lows and enjoy the highs. Yep. And I find that really refreshing too, because then you're focusing more on your business and you're focusing less on what the top line is and what you're getting paid. And then I think the other thing, we're just talking about the future of the industry, is that it's so hard as the industry progresses from, you know, I feel like when I started, the average herd size was 350 cows. I think now in Tasmania it's 750. I don't know what it is nationally. But you think, you know, if the average is 350 8 years ago, then then 50% of the industry is below 350. And so there are a lot of farms that as they drop out, they're not getting replaced because, the cost of upgrading infrastructure or depreciating that infrastructure over that smaller number of cows is really challenging. And on the top side, for us, our challenge is, you'd love to go and buy a block down the road or, but is that to have a runoff block, it might return us 2.5% or 3%. Whereas for us to get an asset that can return 7 to 10%, it has to be adjoining to the dairy.
Yes.
And so that makes it really challenging for us to grow because it has to be adjoining, has to be contiguous, and we have to access it. Whereas if I was a cropper, if I bought something 2 k's down the road, it doesn't matter. I can still just drive the harvester down the road to get it. So I think that can have a real impact on, the non-greenfield sites continuing to grow because, am I best to deploy my capital on a runoff block that'll get 2 or 3%, or am I best to wait another 4 years and try and get something that's next door? And so, I think that and the smaller herd sizes dropping out the bottom, I think they're probably a few things that are going on within the industry.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that is definitely the evolution is bigger farms. You see it globally, particularly in the US. They're at the extreme, obviously, but it's definitely what we're seeing from an Australian perspective as well. It will be interesting. I know a few farmers that are going that extra level of almost replicating a US barn style farming system, and bringing the grass to the cows. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, and how successful it is, and probably more importantly, whether that then attracts more investment from corporate.
Yes,
essentially, as opposed to farming itself.
It's interesting. We've the home farm, the cows will do around 490 kilos per cow. And the farm that we've recently purchased last year, they did 580 a cow. But it's a higher input farm. And just around your house thing is that you really notice it when you're on a lower input, lower output system, and then you're running something alongside that's higher input, higher output. You just know you've got to dilute that cost over a bigger production base. And so if you're not getting that production base, then your cost of production goes up, and you're in a spiral, more challenging situation.
No, that's right. So I think from an organic way, organic evolution of the industry without any intervention from any other process that's going to be put in place, I think that is what's going to happen. There's still a big demand for Australian dairy, both domestically and international. I think from an industry, personally, I'd like to see that total milk pool grow so that Australia is genuinely competitive internationally. Whether that will happen, I don't know. It seems to be, and probably what I lament is there seems to be different forces pulling in different directions as far as that goes. So actually just on that, and you mentioned the clawback all those years ago before you joined, but ever since that, again, from our vantage point, there has been a growing animosity between dairy farming base. There's a massive generalisation, not for everyone obviously, but a generalisation, an animosity between dairy farmers and processors. And sometimes it's really heated, and sometimes it's more cordial. But what has been your view from your vantage point? Do you think that's an accurate description, and how do we fix that?
I think it's pretty challenging when you don't see the. I just wonder if you've got a load of grain to sell today, you can actually look at the global grain price. You can work back. Well, you would know so much more than me, but you can work back basis, and you can basically get it back to your farm gate. And that's what the global price is on a trade in Chicago, whereas so that's pretty transparent. Whereas for dairy, it's pretty challenging to get that transparency around what your milk's worth. And I don't think that helps, and I don't think it can be fixed. But I think it's really hard for us to get an idea of what is this milk actually attracting in the global markets, and then you overlay that with what's happened with the dairy code. And it would be challenging I've got a lot of sympathy for being a processor where you're having to, put out a milk price on is it July or June 1, and your I think it was probably put out with the idea of like reducing chances of clawback, but I guess it just seems like the way that competition has worked is that that's basically ended up as the last price, as the
highest price
very,
is the first
very
price,
close to the highest price, and so that's become even harder with the transparency thing, hasn't it?
It has. So this is my point, and my contention is that dairy code was based on the way the cooperative model used to be. Mm-hmm. So essentially, with Murray Goulburn or Bonlac back in the day, which come out at an opening price, which because it's a cooperative, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
It started pretty low.
Yeah.
And then because almost under the cooperative model, the farmers are somewhat shareholders in the business, so they're not going anywhere. It's kind of everyone's in it together. You start low, and then as the season progresses, you have your step-ups, which will typically retrospective as well. So by the time you got to December, January, you'd say pretty good year. We're having big step up, retrospective back to July. So the idea was that it was going to be starting low and then build with step ups through the year. What's happened with the dairy code is, number one, there's very few cooperatives left.
Yes.
One or two maybe. But that whole pricing system has stayed. Mm. So you start with that opening price and then theoretically have step ups through the year until you get your final price, which is where everyone's making money.
Yeah.
Because of the shrinking milk pool and because of the way the dairy code works, it becomes a bidding auction kind of fire sale at the beginning of the season where every processor is outbidding themselves to get to the top and then getting it to the end and going, holy crap, I've essentially committed myself to 12 months to this price, which who knows what's going to happen in middle of January in a drought or the currency or whatever it might be. So that's from a processing point of view. I think from a dairy farmer's point of view, I'd be interested in your thoughts on whether you think it's been a good thing.
I think it is nice to start the season knowing that you have the low point sorted, and so that you can work through some of your costs and set your business up for the season. But it does seem like we've entered a situation now where, we're lagging the global market. So, where it feels, I can't quite remember, but, a few years ago we were getting $9.20 or something and the global price finished the year at $7.50. So obviously the milk companies were probably burning some cash that year. And then the next year it felt like it was in reverse. And I think that on that transparency piece, I can completely see why the milk companies have done it, because their pricing structure, they have to do it that way and they have to probably leave some in the kitty. But I do wonder whether we're actually just making it less transparent, which is kind of increasing the animosity and making it more risky that people are going to leave the industry or that the processors are going to want to leave the industry too. And neither of those outcomes are good things.
Well, that's what we've seen over recent times. I mean, probably both sides of the fence, really. Dairy farmers, obviously the shrinking milk pool would be evidence of that, of farmers leaving the industry. And from the processing side, we've had companies go bankrupt and we've had lots of plant closures. So I don't know if the current system is working particularly well for anyone. And again, I think it is relating to that transparency. From our point of view, for the way we price milk makes for a very elongated reaction to market signals. Yep. So you can obviously we've committed to a price on June 1 that's for the whole of the year. So you make these investment decisions on your farm based on that, whereas the market might be coming off fairly dramatically just as you're saying, well, this is a pretty good price, I'm going to ramp up.
Yes, yeah.
And not knowing that next year the market's going to react to this low price where everyone's lost a crapload of money through the year, and just at the time where you've made a big investment decision. And it can happen both ways.
Yes.
You're like low price, but I'm not going to see the benefits of an uptick in pricing until 12 months hence.
Yes. Yeah.
So it works both ways. The way we do it, it just makes for it just makes for a very, very elongated reaction to pricing.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, we are going massively over time.
Sorry.
Actually, no, it's been such a great chat, and Really lived up to what I was hoping this would be, which is really insightful and really considered viewpoint from your side. You did have one question for me. Did you want to ask?
Well, it's probably changed. I wanted to ask you about. Well, actually, I've got two questions now.
Okay.
The first one is Lactalis and Fonterra, and the second one is probably from a dairy farmer perspective. Is can you tell us a bit more about Ausfine and what you guys do and how a farmer would see what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So the first one's obviously Fonterra New Zealand has sold their assets in Fonterra Australia.
Yeah.
Which is a very big move and probably reflective of what we're talking about before, where processors are really assessing their exposure to the Australian milk pool. Lactalis are the biggest dairy company in the world now and hungry to continue their acquisition. So what does that mean for the Australian industry? I think what it probably means is that Fonterra New Zealand are going to be looking at the Australian domestic business as their own type of thing, and really once they've played out their 2 or 3 year transition with Lactalis, so they're going to be quite aggressive, I would think, on New Zealand imports into Australia without that protection. I think from a Lactalis point of view, they see their value in branded and value added products, less so probably ingredients.
Yep.
This is just all at a guess.
Yeah.
I think from a farmer's point of view, that would probably mean a reduction in demand for milk because you need less milk to feed the fresh milk market, but a higher price.
Yeah.
So it's kind of. But having said that, there's a whole bunch of assets sitting there on Fonterra Australia, which are large sites that can process a lot of milk. So there'll be it'll be an interesting next 2 or 3 years. So it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. Ausfine Foods, so we've been around since the late 1980s. Originally, we weren't purely an exporter of Australian dairy and meat products, mostly bulk ingredient products. On our meat side, so we still have a meat division, it is still 99.9% Australian origin. From the dairy side, it coincided, so it's since the 2000s, since the early 2000s, when Australia was at that peak milk, the amount of product available for export has shrunk dramatically. The Australian population has gone from 17 or 18 million people to now 27 million people. At the same time, Australian milk's gone from 12 billion down to 8 billion now. So the amount of available milk for export just shrunk. So our capability to source product and stay relevant in the industry was really impacted. So what that meant is we've now sourced product from all over the world. We do a lot of product out of the US into our traditional markets, and we also do import bulk ingredients into Australia as well.
So what are the traditional markets?
So Asia.
Asia
typically. So Philippines, Indonesia, China, but predominantly Asia.
Cool.
So as their kind of milk, the US has done the opposite. So they've gone from purely a domestic play to much more export focused.
Can you see that continue?
Absolutely, it's going to continue. Just the way that they are incentivized, and their the way they lobby the government, etc. Yes, I think that is going to continue, and the incentives by individual state governments to set up farms and processing facilities, and because they're not restricted to a pasture-based system, they see growth in places like Texas, Arizona, these hot places that, but they've still got 5,000-6,000 cow farms. So yes, I do see that as that will continue, and I think that's why the Australian dairy industry, whilst difficult because of what you've said before around the disparity around different types of farms and everything, I think we need to get our act together. Is my take on it. So, mate, we have run so far over time, but that is because it's been such an interesting conversation. Really appreciate hearing your story and your background and just your energy as well. So thank you very much for coming in today on the podcast.
No drama. All good.
Good stuff. Thanks, James. Thank you.